Snow had a way of quieting even the loudest memories. That morning, it fell in slow, deliberate flakes, as if the sky itself were thinking carefully before letting go. The town lay hushed beneath its weight. Rooftops bowed, fence posts softened, footprints erased almost as soon as they were made. Marshal Elias Crowe walked through it with a measured pace, each step timed to the uneven breath of the dog beside him. The leash between them was slack, not from training, but from trust grown old. Ashen's paws pressed into the snow with effort now. Once, they had struck the ground like drumbeats, confident, relentless, alive with purpose. Today, they moved as if the earth were heavier than it used to be. Frost gathered along the dog's muzzle, clinging to graying fur. His breath came in shallow plumes, brief clouds that vanished before Elias could count them. Still, Ashen did not stop. He never had. Elias felt the stares before he saw the faces. Curtains twitched. A saloon door creaked open and closed too quickly. The town had opinions about men who lingered too long in their grief, about dogs who outlived their usefulness. Word traveled faster in winter when there was little else to do but talk. Some said the marshal was cruel for dragging out the inevitable. Others said he was weak. No one said he was loyal, though loyalty was the one thing that had ever saved them all. Ashen faltered near the old hitching rail. His legs trembled, a subtle shiver that ran through his body like a misfired memory. Elias stopped at once, crouching despite the ache in his knees. He pressed his forehead to Ashen's, breathing in the familiar scent of fur and leather and cold. "Easy, boy," he murmured, though he knew there was nothing easy left in the world. Ashen's tail stirred once, a small, stubborn gesture, as if to reassure the man who had followed him into gunfire and blizzards alike. The clinic stood at the edge of town, its windows pale with frost, its door marked by years of boots and bad news. Dr. Lillian Frost kept her practice there, far from the saloon laughter and the courthouse pride. She had learned early that endings preferred quiet places. Elias hesitated before reaching for the handle. His hand shook, not from cold, but from the knowledge that this door, once opened, would not easily close again. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and wood smoke. Dr. Frost looked up from her ledger, her sharp eyes softening as they found Ashen. She said nothing at first. Words had a way of breaking things when spoken too soon. Instead, she knelt, letting Ashen sniff her glove, acknowledging him as more than a case, more than a body failing its time. "Morning, Marshal," she said gently. Elias nodded. His voice had gone somewhere deep and hard to reach. "Morning." She examined Ashen with practiced care, listened to his chest, felt along his spine, checked the pale of his gums. Her movements were efficient, but not rushed. She noticed everything, including the way Ashen leaned into Elias's leg as if anchoring himself there. The dog's heart fluttered beneath her fingers, uneven, tired. She did not say what she was thinking. She had learned that some truths needed time to be earned. While she prepared the syringe, Elias's mind wandered back, through years the town preferred to forget. Nights when Ashen had pulled him from wreckage after a bridge collapse. Dawn patrols where the dog's ears caught sounds no human could hear. A winter not unlike this one, when a lost child had been found because Ashen refused to stop digging through snow crusted hard as stone. The town had cheered then. They had carved Ashen's name into memory, like it would last forever. Now silence pressed close. Elias knelt beside Ashen, resting a hand on his chest, feeling each breath like a fragile promise. He whispered apologies he hadn't known he'd been carrying. Sorry for the longer shifts, the missed signs, the nights he chose duty over rest. Ashen listened, dark eyes steady, as if storing every word somewhere warm. When the moment came, it arrived without ceremony. Dr. Frost stepped closer, syringe in hand, her face composed in the way only those accustomed to grief could manage. Elias nodded once. His heart felt too large for his chest, as if it might break free and scatter across the floor. That was when Ashen moved. With a sound halfway between a breath and a memory, the dog gathered what little strength he had left and pushed himself upright. His legs wobbled, threatening to fold, but he held. Slowly, deliberately, he pressed his head into Elias's chest. The contact knocked the air from Elias's lungs. Before he could react, Ashen lifted a paw and hooked it into the marshal's coat, pulling himself closer, as if refusing to be left behind. Time faltered. The room seemed to narrow to that single point of contact, fur against wool, heartbeat against heartbeat. Elias wrapped his arms around Ashen instinctively, tears freezing before they could fall. He felt the dog's body tremble, not with fear, but with effort, with intention. This was not confusion. This was choice. Dr. Frost froze. Her hand hovered in the air, the syringe forgotten. Something in Ashen's breathing had changed, not slowed, but steadied, as though the embrace itself had aligned something inside him. She leaned closer, listening again, frowning slightly. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes, impatient, as if the world were waiting to see what would happen next. Elias looked up at her, a question in his eyes he was afraid to ask aloud. Ashen remained pressed against him, holding on with everything he had left. The snow continued to fall outside, quiet and relentless, covering the town in white, while inside the small room, a decision hovered, unfinished, unresolved, refusing, for just a moment longer. Dr. Frost lowered the syringe, as if it had suddenly grown heavier than her hand could justify. She listened again, closer this time, her ear pressed to Ashen's chest, her brow knitting with a careful kind of doubt. The rhythm, she found there was uneven. Yes, but it was present, insistent in a way that did not belong to something ready to surrender. She straightened slowly, meeting Elias's gaze, and in that exchange passed a fragile understanding neither dared to name yet. "Give me a moment," she said, her voice low, almost reverent. She moved with renewed precision, checking Ashen's temperature, lifting his eyelids, tracing the faint tremor beneath his ribs. What she saw did not match the finality she had prepared for. The dog was cold, dangerously so, his body conserving what little warmth it had left, his strength locked behind a curtain of exhaustion. Hypothermia, compounded by age and long exposure. It mimicked the stillness of dying, but it was not death itself. Not yet. Elias did not speak. He kept his arms around Ashen, offering the only heat he had, his breath warming the space between them. He felt foolish hope stirring, the kind that hurt even as it bloomed, but he did not push it away. Ashen's paw remained hooked in his coat, the grip loosening and tightening with each breath, a quiet insistence that felt like a vow. Dr. Frost moved quickly now, calling for blankets, lighting the small iron stove in the corner, setting water to warm. The clinic filled with the sounds of purposeful motion, the scrape of metal, the soft rush of flame, the murmur of instructions given more to herself than to anyone else. She laid Ashen down gently, never fully breaking the contact between dog and man. When she finally eased the paw free, she replaced it with Elias's hand, guiding it to the dog's chest as if to say, "Stay here." Night crept in without ceremony. Snow thickened against the windows, turning the world outside into a blank page. Elias sat on the floor beside the table, his back against the wall, his coat wrapped around Ashen's frail body. Dr. Frost worked in measured intervals, warming, monitoring, waiting. Healing, she knew, was often less about intervention and more about patience. At some point, the door opened quietly. Clara Bell stepped inside, her cheeks flushed from the cold, a thermos clutched to her chest. She had heard the murmur passing through town, felt the pull of unfinished things. Without asking, she poured hot broth into a cup and set it beside Elias. Their eyes met briefly. No words were exchanged. She sat on the bench near the stove, close enough to share the warmth, far enough to respect the gravity of the vigil. Hours passed in that suspended way winter nights often do. Ashen's breathing deepened, each rise and fall less strained than the last. His body, slowly, reluctantly, began to answer the care being offered. Elias dozed in brief, restless intervals, waking each time the dog shifted, each time Dr. Frost checked a pulse or adjusted a blanket. Every small improvement felt monumental, every setback mercifully minor. By morning, the storm had spent itself. Pale light filtered through the frost-laced windows, soft and tentative. Dr. Frost listened once more, then allowed herself a small nod. "He's holding," she said, as if that were the highest praise the moment could bear. Elias swallowed hard, his chest aching with relief. He had not yet earned the right to trust. When Ashen stirred, it was with a low sound, more breath than voice. His eyes opened, clouded but aware. He found Elias immediately, his tail tapping once against the table. A quiet, stubborn punctuation mark at the end of a long night. Elias laughed then, a sound that surprised them both, breaking into something close to a sob before settling into a smile worn thin by gratitude. Word traveled, as it always did. By midday, children left folded blankets at the clinic door. Someone shoveled the steps without being asked. The town's judgment softened, reshaped by the simple fact of survival. Sheriff Boone did not come by, but his absence spoke louder than his presence ever had. The silence he left behind felt like an apology the wind would carry off. In the days that followed, Ashen grew stronger in increments too small to measure, but impossible to deny. He stood, then walked, then leaned less heavily into Elias's side. The leash returned to Elias's hand, not as a necessity, but as a symbol of a bond redefined. Dr. Frost watched them go with a look that lingered long after the door closed, aware that she had witnessed something rarer than recovery, a refusal to let love be overruled by convenience. On their first walk home, the snow crunched beneath Ashen's paws with a familiar rhythm. The town looked different, quieter in a gentler way. Elias felt something inside him settle, not because the fear was gone, but because it had been faced and answered. He knelt once more, resting his forehead against Ashen's, breathing in the cold, the life, the moment. If you have ever stood at the edge of an ending and felt something hold you back, some small, insistent warmth, this is the part where you listen. Love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it presses close, steady and unyielding, and asks only that you stay. If this story stirred something quiet in you, linger a little longer. Walk with us through the snow. Subscribe, and keep listening to the whispers that remind us why we endure.